Welcome to another episode of Wealth Beyond Numbers. We're staying here with Deirdre Nero from Nero Immigration Law. We continue on the topic of immigration and wealth management and how both topics intertwine. And Deirdre, I want to talk to you about some myths with regards to immigration. You know, now with technology, people think that things go fast. Maybe the same thing happens with immigration, that you fill out a form and you're supposed to get a quick answer. I think you probably can speak better on that topic than I can. Does that happen? It's a common misunderstanding?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that I unfortunately have to tell clients usually right at the beginning of our, conversation, starting to work together, is that this is going to take a lot longer than you think it's going to take. And that's for a variety of reasons, right? Like a lot of times the delay is front loaded, right? Like it's like a lot of preparation time to get a case ready to be filed. And that also depends, number one, on the client and how quick and diligent they are, but also on like the type of case it is, how complex it is, how much information we need to get. Do we need to get information from overseas? Do we have to have stuff translated? Like there's a lot of moving parts to preparing a case. So a lot of times there's a lot of time at the front. But then once we kind of send it off to wherever it's going, whatever government office this is being filed with, be it the Department of Labor, the Department of State, the Department of Homeland Security, which is immigration, we work with all those agencies on different types of cases. The delay it's kind of out of our hands, right? So a lot of times we don't know how long it's going to take. And it's so funny because they put these processing times online where it's supposed to be an estimate. It's never right. It's always way off. Sometimes stuff goes a lot faster than you think once you file it and you're like, oh my God, that was so fast. How did we get this so fast? And then other times it's like the slowest process and we're like, why are we still waiting for this? And it gets really frustrating for the client but also for us as well. So it's a lot about like managing expectations, which can be hard when there's so much unknown when you're working with the government. Also, we notice too, when there's a change of administration, stuff tends to slow down a lot of times, but other times, sometimes it speeds up. We've seen certain types of cases get faster in the last couple of months. We've seen other things get slower. Added hurdles in, when you're dealing with, for example, changing the staff, right? Pulling all of the embassy staff and replacing them with other people. Okay, well then, these cases are going to take a lot longer when you're now with new functionaries that have to get up to speed on what's going on and all of that. So it can cause a lot of delays just also when administrations are changing, when policies are changing. Everyone's got to figure out the new policies. It's not just the lawyers who are trying to figure out what does this policy change mean. It's also the people who are adjudicating the cases in the government. Like, okay, wait, like I learned something one way, now I have to figure out how to do it a different way. So all of that stuff causes delays. And the part about in the immigration world that makes it hard is that a lot of times it's hard to give clients an accurate estimate on how long something is going to take.
Do you give them an idea? Maybe
I try to give them an idea, but I'm always qualifying that with, I really can't be sure on this. I can tell you from past experience, I can tell you recently similar cases, but you never actually know what it's going to be for a particular case.
Got it. Is it true that non-U.S. citizens can own property or start a business here? Or can a non-U.S. person start a business here in the U.S.?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the funny thing is like, you don't need to have any immigration status to start a business in the U.S. Or to invest in the U.S. or, to buy a property here. If you want to actually then come to the U.S. to run that business or to live in that property or, what have you, then you're probably going to need some immigration tweaking to your status. But it really depends on what country the person's from, what their situation is, how long do they want to actually be in the U.S., and what do they want to be doing when they're here. So a lot of times we'll have someone who owns a property, let's just say, but they don't really live in that property. Maybe they rent it out, or maybe they just visit occasionally and they use that property and the rest of the time it sits empty or is being rented. That person, if that's all they're doing, like, they can do that with just like their visitor status. That's fine, But if they want to then start working or do something else or stay longer or, go to school, or then, we have to start looking at, okay, you're not allowed to do that as just a tourist. So now we have to graduate you into another category of immigration status. And the same goes for, which a lot of people don't understand, but starting a business, right? Incorporating a business and actually running that business, if you're not physically in the US, you can do that with no immigration status at all because you're not physically in the US. Once you're in the US and wanting to actively participate and make money off of that business, then you need to get a status that allows you to do that. But that's not always a green card or citizenship. A lot of times it's one of these other non-immigrant visas that allow for that. So we call it the alphabet soup. There's, A, B, C, D, to Z almost. Not every letter is taken, but most letters have a designation, and that is like the classification of the person if they're not a green card holder or a citizen. And each letter, so you've got the visitor visa, for example, is a B visa, right? And so those people are allowed to do certain things with their visitor visa. But if they want to then go outside of what's allowed, then they have to try to get one of the other letters, right? Like if they want to start going to school, well, then they need to get the F visa, which is for students, or something like that. Starting a business and living in the US to run it is a different one, So yes, it's a myth that you can't do that because you can, but then, you just need to be careful that you're not going beyond the bounds of what's allowed.
And people can switch visas. That's okay.
Yeah, I mean, if you do it the right way, you can definitely switch between categories. And you can either do that from inside of the U.S., which actually doesn't get you like a new visa, just gets you what we call a new status or a new classification. Or you can travel out to get an actual like new visa in your passport. And so we can facilitate both of them. I think definitely
One that you might have experienced recently from a client.
I mean, the one that we touch on every day, which I already touched on, is like, I can do this myself type of thing, which is just...
Yeah. You talked about the I-9s.
Very hard for people. I'm not going to get in trouble. They're not going to know. How are they going to know that I'm working, on my tourist visa? How are they going to know that I left the country and that I came back in without being inspected? I don't know exactly how they know, but they know. Like, it's crazy. Like, the amount of intelligence that the government has on what people are doing is a lot more than most people realize. And so if you've ever thought, well, how are they know? They're not going to find out. That's you're already heading down a bad path there. That's going to not end well for you because it can get intense with the amount of information that the government has on people. Sorry to scare people, but I'm not trying to scare people, but it's a little crazy.
Well, Alexa, you say something, and if Alexa's listening to you, they probably will show up on your social media feed.
I'm like, who's listening to me right now? Seriously, yeah. That's definitely one that we see a lot.
Interesting. Well, thank you so much for sharing all these little myths. Is there anything else that you want to share, another myth, or you kind of close it out?
I'm trying to think. I mean, do you have any other ones that you wanted to ask me? I think the Social Security number was interesting.
Oh, tell me more.
I think you mentioned about like getting a Social Security number, that you need a Social Security number to work.
Do you?
It's funny because you actually, depending on your immigration status, you don't necessarily need a social security number to work.
Okay.
But you do in that, like, if you want to get paid and you want to be able to, like, be onboarded for payroll and for your taxes and for, yes, you need a social. Account. But technically, like, someone who's coming in with a work visa that then needs to, like, wait for their social can start working before they have their social. They will get a social. But it's like, it's very strange, like the whole interplay between immigration status and social security numbers. And like, not every immigration status that is like a good, valid status will allow someone to get a social security number. Some do and some don't. So that's also kind of confusing for people.
And does the social security expire? Would that be revoked? Can
that
be revoked?
It doesn't actually. Once you have a number, like, it's like a fingerprint. Like, once you have a social security number, that's your number forever. But what we do see a lot of, which is actually another myth, which is like, if I have the social security card that says valid for work only with DHS authorization, that then once I become like a citizen or something, I can't use that anymore. And it's like, that's not really true. That's just because you got your card and your number issued when you were in a status that also required you to present evidence that you were authorized to work in the U.S. Because a U.S. citizen can present a valid driver's license and a social that doesn't have that writing on it, and that, in theory, proves that they're authorized to work. But if it has that wording on it, then you would need to present something else, like a work permit or a work visa or something else that shows that you're authorized to work. So the social on its own doesn't. But I think the myth is really that once you do graduate to a status where you wouldn't have that wording on your social, that you need to get like a new social, which you don't.
It wouldn't change the number.
It doesn't. Basically. It doesn't change the number at all. And like, you don't, just because your card has that wording on it doesn't mean that like you can't use it.
That makes sense.
But the good news is that you can get a new card that doesn't have that wording on it, but it's going to be the same number. So at the end of the day, like, your number's your number.
That's amazing. I didn't know that.
And
That's valuable information.
Yeah, it's interesting. A lot of little kids can't get the number because they aren't in a immigration status that allows them to get a number. So then the parents are like, well, what are we supposed to do? Because the kid has like a valid non-immigrant visa through whatever the parents have. But the school is asking us for a social. I should get a social to declare them on my taxes. And so that's when we send them to, a CPA or someone who can help them get an ITIN number.
Oh, wow.
Which you can basically use in place of a social in the appropriate circumstance. Like, for example, for a child.
Like a tax ID.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
For a child, that's usually what we recommend.
Oh, interesting. I did not know that. You're sharing so much knowledge, Deirdre. Thank you. You don't even
There's
know
a lot of stuff.
all the things that you know, but this is all things that are new to a lot of our audience and that they didn't know, and these are myths and misconceptions. Thank you so much, Deirdre, for sharing all this. Our next episode, I want to actually learn more about your practice and how long you've been doing what you do and what sets you apart. So thank you so much for being with us. Please stay with us. Don't leave. Yes, we want to know more about now Deirdre Nero and Nero immigration law.
Amazing.
So this was another episode of Wealth Beyond Numbers. As we like to say at Core Wealth Management, financial and retirement confidence starts here. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Thanks.